Well, welcome back to our collaborative learning community. Great to be with everybody on this webinar, and I know for some of you this is the first time, and for all of us it's kind of refreshing our memory on how we do this, but all in all it ends up being kind of a fun way to be together on a Friday afternoon. We're sunny here in Indianapolis, but we had our first snow last night, but I can't complain because I know you guys in northern New Jersey had a real bad batch of it. So anyway, the topic for today is teaching and learning in online courses. And here I'm just going to buzz through a few more slides that you have here. Again, just reminding you how to do this if you need it. And everybody should have their handouts, with you so you can refresh your memory. And again, we try to keep all the lines muted. And when you want to participate, use that icon and raise your hand, and then the *6 will unmute, and then put yourself back onto the mute by pressing *6 again. So here we go. The topic: teaching and learning in online courses. And this last spring, I did the survey that we've been doing at the end of the CLC to see how things are going and what suggestions you have for content for this year. And this was one of the topics that popped up. And, of course, I just jumped right on that because some of you may know that this was my program of research, was trying to uncover the best practices for teaching and learning online. So I'm thrilled to be able to talk, do this session. But in thinking about it, I have and can teach a 3-credit course on this topic, or I can do a week's workshop. I'm boiling this down to an hour and a half. What on earth would be, what should I do? So then I kind of thought I would do it as a question and answer. And some of you have raised your questions, and I'm going to answer them. And the other questions are ones that, come up often. So that's kind of how I thought we would approach this particular session. Now, if you've had a chance to look at this, and your favorite question, or the thing that you most need to know at this point in time, isn't here, let's get it on the table. So I'll be sure to stop now and then to be sure that everybody who wants to ask more questions or get more information, that we have time to do that. So that's where that *6 comes in handy. And then we're going to do, of course, try to be a little interactive here, because that's one of the best practices is the active learning. So we'll try to do a little bit of that too. So one other comment I want to make before we get going. When I was looking around for a nice template for this session, I found this one, and all of a sudden it kind of seemed like it was a metaphor for teaching and learning, in distance ed or distance accessible courses. Because when you walk into your online course, or you're not really walking, when you sit down at your computer and go into it, things are just a little off kilter a bit. And you have to kind of get reoriented, and I think probably by the time we're done with this slide set and getting our eyes used to reading it on an angle, at the end of an hour and a half, we'll have the hang of it. And that's really kind of the metaphor for, using the technology and, working with your students in the new environment, if it is new for you. So we'll kind of keep that metaphor in mind. So kind of moving ahead here, people always want to know why do we do this? And while we're titling this online, it's really about distance accessible, because most of the things, the technology that we have now, we can do blended, and I will talk a little bit more, about how to blend and what to think about when you do blending. But why did we even start out thinking to do that in the first place? Well, I like to think of it is that the main reason that we do this is to be helpful to the students. And we can do many, many things in an online or distance accessible environment than we can in the classroom. Of course, there's some things that work better in the classroom too, but bottom line, we're really trying to be sure that we're helping the students learn. And then another thing that really comes up of, why do it, these are the decisions that schools have to make, and I know many of you have gone through these decision-making processes, is to make the courses accessible for students. And we, particularly if you're working with post-licensure students or students who cannot get to a central place, such as a university or campus, using some distance ed technology really helps them to get there. And one thing, I'll link this back to when we were together at the annual meeting, and you heard several of the presentations about the RN to DSN programs, and all of them were using distance technology to make their courses accessible for students. And more students are choosing this way of learning, and it's almost something that schools need to be thinking about if they're wanting to recruit and attract students who maybe just aren't right in the same city where the university is. So there's the flexibility too. And then I want to bring this back. I'll probably reiterate it again, but we really are trying to help students learn, and that we are using the best practices, which we'll talk about here a little bit. So about the learning, we're trying to focus on, helping the students meet program outcomes and competencies of, whatever. And in some ways, because our teaching shifts, we can focus more on higher level learning, getting the students to synthesize information, to be working in those higher levels of the domain and not just sitting in the classroom listening. So we're really trying to do that. And we're really trying to be sure that, particularly, there's intentional design in these courses to help the students. You have learning activities that help them to, get the content going. So, again, it's all about the students, making things accessible for them. There's lots of things that you can do in an online course that make this more individual for the students. They can take tests over and over again until they get them right. They can do, just in time. They can pull things up the minute before they need to have it ready. And there's just lots of options that typically don't get implemented in a classroom. And I'm going to stop because I see Ola's hand raised. And Ola, do you have a question for us? If so, put star mute and ask it. Or star 6 to unmute. Let's try that better.
Ola's not able to ask a question because Ola doesn't have a phone icon next to her name.
Okay.
So she's one of the call-in users.
Okay.
She should still be able to press star 6, though, I believe.
Okay. So, Ola, you want to try star 6 on your phone? Okay, when you get there, if you get there, I'll hear you. But otherwise, I'm going to move ahead here. So we're keeping the students in mind. So I'll stop here. Anything more you want me to say about why? Why did you distance ed? Or other comments that you want to add about why you're doing it or not doing it? Okay, and I don't think I see any questions. And Lori, Scott, Lori, do you still have your hand up from when we were practicing? And Karen has a hand up.
Diane, I was trying to get my hand down, but I wasn't sure how to do that.
Okay, Jennifer, do you want to say? I think you just click on it.
Highlight your name and then just click on the hand again.
Okay. Yeah, nothing is happening when I oh wait, here we go. Okay, let me give it a whirl.
Okay. So I'm taking this to mean that nobody else wants to comment. All righty, well then we'll move on to the next question. And this is the one that always comes up, and particularly when people are wanting to be considering whether they should do something just instead offer a course or a program or whatever. People want to know, does it work? Is it a good thing? And yes, that's my bottom line answer for you.
Okay, I got it, Diane.
Okay.
Through the telephone.
Okay, good. Thanks for letting me know.
Oh.
Okay. Good. Good. So, yes, and when the faculty that I've worked with, and they start saying, oh, this isn't going to work, then I know that we're seeing symptoms of resistance. So, yes, here's some of the evidence, and there is so much, research out there about this now. Even in the last month or two, people are still writing, doing the studies that are trying to be sure that it's working for them or for students in general. So here's what the literature would tell us, that the students, learn as well as in any other way, whether in the classroom, whether, used to test it against computer-assisted instruction, against webinars, whatever. Learning takes place, and I'm saying no more media comparison studies. Everybody wants to compare, the students in a distance ed course to something else, the classroom version of it, and truly you're not going to find out anything much different. We call that the no significant difference phenomenon in instructional technology, because it does work. And then the research that I and colleagues, and you'll see it in many other places too, the students can be socialized. All the associate degree students, all the way up to PhD students, can be socialized when they're taking their entire program on, through using just through media. And students are satisfied. They can learn all these different courses. So again, you don't need to worry about comparing one type of degree to another. Same thing there. And when the 7 principles of good education are used in the courses, and we'll talk in more detail about those, the effectiveness just goes, skyrockets. And when it's not there, the students, when those principles aren't being integrated into the courses, the students are less satisfied and, less socialized and all of that. So, and also, if you're asking on satisfaction, generally speaking now, most students, like the fact that the courses are accessible and convenient. And yes, we still hear, the issues about the ages of students, if they're haven't grown up in the information age and are comfortable using the computer and all of that they get, that they may be dissatisfied. But the truth of the matter is, once they get the hang of it, they tend to come along and be happy. And I think, Liz Steekman and Janet Phelps, when we talked last time we were together at the annual meeting, kind of said that too, that their RN to BSM students are happy. And sometimes at my school, we chose this technology because we needed to increase our enrollment in some of the programs where they were dropping, and so sometimes it's a business decision. Okay, so yes, it all works. We don't need to worry about that. Put that to rest and move on. So any other comments or questions at this point about what we've discussed so far, and particularly about any of this evidence? Okay, well then let's move ahead. I'll read this. Oops. Lori, question? Lori Wilt.
Yep.
Nope.
Diane, I have no questions, but I can't get my hand down.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
No, that's no problem. I'll keep that in mind here. Okay. Thanks for letting me know, though.
Okay.
Okay. So, I think the fact of the matter is most of our distance accessible programs and courses now are really more or less blended, because we have, a wide range of technologies, and it's just simply getting better. So we can, easily put the campus courses and, mix and match them with some online aspects of a course. I think many master's programs and most doctoral programs do something, some kind of an immersion program. I have a friend who's working on her just starting the DMP program down in southern Indiana, and they had an immersion weekend, 3 days, that they went down and kind of got started with the program, but the rest of it now is going to be online. And probably where the biggest surge of distance successful programs is that DMP, because the students there are working, many of them as practitioners, and are still have full-time jobs. Anyway, and then you can blend all this with the Learning Lab, and sometimes some of the programs bring students back to the Learning Lab for simulations or to a sim center, or bring them back for checkoffs on some particular kind of skill. And so you can put that all in the mix. And then with the online, and I'm assuming everybody knows what a learning management system is. That's like the Blackboard or WebCT and Angel and some of those brands that you may be familiar with. And I would guess most of your schools, your universities have something, in some form of a learning management system. And I know many of you are offering distance ed courses. And now we can blend this mix, the webinar. And again, lots of schools have, something similar to this. The one that our school uses is Adobe Connect, and, it's just part of the tool set for faculty. So we can, have some synchronous learning time, and we can have asynchronous, and we can have them come to the campus. So all of this mix and match, all doable. But here is the trick, is getting this mix appropriate. And what it really needs to be thoughtful. And sometimes what I've seen faculty do is they say, oh, we're stuck, we have the students in front of us, so they have them come to campus for, some various kinds of things that maybe really isn't pedagogically useful. So be sure that if you're thinking about mixing, or, one of the questions that comes up is how do you do the mix? And here are all the different places that we can put into the mix, but you have to ask yourself, what is it you're wanting to get accomplished, and where can it be done best? So, a thoughtful, deliberative approach here. And here's, again, kind of, I'm on my soapbox, because this is one of my favorite topics, but, you want to be sure that you're planning this thoughtfully, and that you're starting with a big picture. Generally speaking, I am not so fond of just having 1 or 2 courses online, because it's a lot of investment to get them there. So if you're going to go that far, it's really helpful to have, at least a track, a focus area, or something where you have 3 or 4 courses, or better yet, the whole program. But when you're looking at, say, a curriculum, you want to, think about it, what it is that you're trying to get accomplished, and where should it take place. And here's another little issue to think about in blending is, it's pretty darn easy to say, oh, well, we'll do everything we used to do in the classroom, and, oh, yes, by the way, as part of that classroom, we had the Men Learning Lab, and, oh, yes, let's add a learning management system and have them do 2 activities every week. Well, pretty soon you have more work for the students and for you, the teacher, than is really necessary to achieve the curriculum outcome. So you want to be sure that you have that. And then in this blending, you need to think about what is it the student is doing, and how much time is it going to take them to do it, and what are they doing in the class, and are they coming together for, high-level learning. And what I really love about being able to blend is to think about what needs to be, where you're helping the student learn, the content, so to speak, and then the aspect of all of our content and all of our courses is the application in clinical content, which usually takes place, of course, in the clinical setting, but also can take place in the classroom or the sim center. So some of these things you can offload easily, the learning of the content. And I have a colleague in the physics department. He calls it just-in-time teaching. And he has the students take a quiz on the topics that are going to be discussed in the class that day, or sometimes he puts it up a day beforehand. And if they don't answer the questions sufficiently, then they maybe he doesn't say it this strongly, but they should not come to class because they're not prepared. So you can offload some of this prep, and you can give quizzes or whatever to be sure that they are prepared to come to class and take the next step with you because you're the content and clinical expert that can help. So that's a good thing there about the blending. And we need to be sure you have in your vocabulary synchronous versus asynchronous, and we can again make judicious choices about when to use the synchronous, which that's what we're doing now. We're all together on the webinar. Synchronous also would be in the classroom, and then the asynchronous is more where the students are doing the work at their own speed and their own time, and usually that's run through the learning management system. So part of this decision about how to blend and how to use synchronous and asynchronous is what it is that the learning task is and how to help make your decisions based on that. And you'll see there asynchronous down the bottom. You may be faced with a situation where your students never will be able to meet at the same time, and that more or less then points in the direction of having pretty much of the online learning with learning management system, maybe blended with some moments on campus. But if you have all these tool sets, you can really do a lot of interesting things here. And some programs have the student do some asynchronous work and give them say 1 credit out of a 3-credit class. Do it 1 hour during the week and then 2 hours in the classroom. So, this is one thing that's really fabulous about all this online is that you can, change up how you approach your teaching in your classroom and take advantage of all of it. Okay, so I'm going to stop here for a minute and be sure if anybody has comments or questions about the blending aspect of all this. And I'm more or less thinking most of you have some sense of this anyway. And particularly those of you that have been asking these questions. So I think we're still good to go. I'll keep rattling on then if we are. So next up, we're going to talk about the best practices. And this, with the framework that I used in my research, and if you are reading the SIM research and Pam Jeffries' model of simulation, you'll see these same practices listed in that model. And these, and I'm thinking most of you know what these are, but and particularly those of you who were here last year, because I think every time I had a chance, I tried to work it into the conversation. But anyway, this list of best practices derives from research that was conducted in 1987, but it still works in 2011 here. They synthesized a lot of literature and came up with these 7 practices. So there's the magic list, and let's talk about them in context with online or distance ed. These work in the classroom. The true title of this is Best Practices in Undergraduate Education, but we know now that graduate students also follow these principles, and it works for them too. So anyway, here we are. We set the high expectations, and we know that students are going to learn as much online or in a distance accessible format as they do when they're on campus in a more or less traditional setting. And then the other expectation, or the other way that you get these high expectations, just like you do in the classroom, you need to explain to the students what it is that you want them to do. And that's where the syllabus comes in handy, and we, state our goals and competencies and so on, so that we're communicating with the students what we want them to do. And, online and in the classroom, too, we have the grading rubrics and so on, so you want to be sure that you're explaining how everything's going to be evaluated and what your expectations are there. Okay. And time on task, and this in the context of online, means that we need sufficient time for chunks of learning. That's one thing that I like about being online is maybe some unit of instruction needs 3 weeks to process and digest. So you can make big modules. You don't have to be bound by the weekly schedule, which is really a function of the university time frame, the 15 weeks in a semester, or 12, or whatever it is. So you can be thinking more, how much time is it going to take for the students to process, something. This time on task also means that the students are expected to spend some time here, any course, online or not. It really is necessary, to spend some time. And people ask how much, and I always pull up the Carnegie rule. It just says 3 hours of prep for 1 hour in the classroom. But if we do that realistically, and all of you are students, you can answer that question for yourself. We probably aren't coming up to that, but it's a guideline and it might work. But then the other thing with any of these distance accessible programs is we want to be sure that the time that the students have spent learning is meaningful. And one place where this starts bogging down is if we have lots of discussion forums, and the students are reading and responding in ways that aren't productive of learning. So we want to be sure that when we're designing the courses that we're good with that. Okay, so the big thing here in the classroom or any other place is, learning. The students need to be actively involved. They need to be engaged. We've talked about, you'll read the literature about student engagement. And actually, I'm digressing here a little bit, but the literature about nursing student engagement when compared to regular college students is that our nursing students were not as engaged as people in the liberal arts. The students in the liberal arts courses, and the researcher hypothesizes because they do so much lecturing and not enough activity. So one thing that really I like about the online is it forces you to think, what does the student need to do and produce that they and the teacher can see that they have understood and applied the content. So there's a lot of activities that, you can do to get the students to produce the work so then they can get some kind of a feedback either from themselves or from their classmates or from the teacher. And, of course, the students can create these activities, too. But learning activities are things like solving a case study, writing a 1-minute paper, things like doing debates, activities like that. And they are not assignments, and they do not need to be graded. So you can have students doing activities that do not necessarily result in a grade, but you are looking at what they're doing and giving them feedback about it, and you're giving them some kind of comment. So I think I have another slide by active learning because it's probably the most important part of a web course, because these web courses, if not designed, can be deadly if they end up not being active. So fewer activities and more learning. And I'll say that I learned this lesson the hard way too, in an online evaluation course for a teacher ed course. I had probably 20 activities for the students to do. Write a test, multiple choice test, write an essay test, develop a clinical evaluation tool, on and on and on. But it was too much, even for me, because I had to end up looking at all that. So then I got smart and tried to make higher level kinds of activities that embedded some sub-activities. And I think the students ended up learning more. I hated to part with all that, but in the end, after 2 or 3 iterations of it, it was much better. So this is the whole key to any kind of teaching, is the learning activities, something that's going to produce evidence that the students are on the right track for meeting the goal. And one thing that I've noticed over the years is there is confusion about discussion as a learning activity. And yes, discussion is a learning activity. That's just one of many. And in courses where discussion forums are the only activity, it's deadly, and I'm not sure it's productive use of time. And on your part or the students. So, we really need to think carefully here about how we're designing some activities for active learning. Okay, and of course, another principle is feedback. You know that from your own experience and from working with students too. And what's interesting is that the faculty member doesn't have to be the one that's giving feedback all the time. The students can give it to themselves, and one way is you can design the case studies and practice exams, and they can do them and they can give them the answers, and they can practice and practice until they get it right. And the students can get feedback from each other, and they can do, through the peer review or comments on their work through, written work or blogs or wikis. And the story I would say there, I was teaching a doctoral level research synthesis course, and the students were, to write a draft of the paper of their research synthesis. But before they were to hand it in, I had them exchange papers and give each other peer review, and I had a little checklist. And fortunately, I had a student who did not understand the assignment, paired up with somebody who understood it very clearly, and the aha learning for that other student before she had to hand it in to me was amazing. So just even reading other people's work. And in my classes, I always had the students post everything for everybody to see so that they could get ideas and they could see where their work was coming in relation to everybody in the class. And everybody learned much more. And, we're enriched by the feedback. Okay, and then students and distance courses are getting feedback if they're particularly in a clinical setting. They're getting some experts that they can tap into, that they can network with, and the preceptors and so on. And then, of course, we have responsibility as faculty that we're still giving feedback and monitoring all the students' progress, and we can do that in public or private email, certainly through the discussion forums. But sometimes even just hanging back a little bit, not giving feedback or responding to every single thing, but try to get the big bang for the kinds of feedback that you're giving. And sometimes to say it, just like we do in the classroom, to the entire group about where people are having trouble learning so that everybody can benefit from it. Okay, so feedback is one of the 7 principles, and then interaction with classmates is important too. And this comes from some of the socio-cultural learning theories, the constructivist theories that you may be reading about or have or will. And, this says that students learn from each other, so you want to be sure that you are giving them opportunity to do that. And the good news is, one of the principles is that the interaction with faculty also counts. So we are a key part of being active in the course, and, communicating frequently with the students. I would try to do that through a weekly update, kind of summarizing key things and telling the students what was coming up in the future. One of my doctoral students said she likes it when the teacher in the web courses show the love, and by that she meant she wanted to know that the teacher was there paying attention and appreciating all the good work that she was doing. So there's, we'll say this in a minute, but soon, even if it looks off kilter in the beginning, it will shape up so that you have a sense of who the students are, and they have a sense of who you are, and the community kind of comes together. It takes a little minute to get it going, but it does. So you want to be sure that the faculty, you're present and that you're there, not only for the formal aspects of the class, but some of the other things that we do as faculty that are, not directly related to the course, but related to the professional development of the students. So, interaction with the faculty, and then I think the last one, I've got these in order, the 7th principle is respect for diversity, and we take this to mean as providing options for how students like to learn and ways that they can apply the course concept and deciding whether they want to work as a group or individual, and then certainly respect for people's ideas and being able to communicate respectfully. So, there we are, 7 principles. I'll stop here for a minute before we do active learning. Any questions, comments about these 7 principles? I think you probably all heard them, or they're intuitive. That's the other thing I like about them. They're really not rocket science here, but they are evidence-based, and they work. That's what the research said. It was Helen Connors and Diane Skiba, time and time again. The intercorrelations among those 7 principles were, high, and then certainly when we were correlating them with outcomes such as satisfaction and learning and socialization and a couple other things, the more those practices were evident in the course, the students perceived them being there, the better everything turned out. So, I love those 7 principles. So, questions or comments? I'm going to Ian up here and see if anybody has their hand raised. And Maria, looks like you do. I don't know if it's a real one, but go ahead and let me star 6 to unmute. Maria, do you want to ask a question or make a comment?
Can you hear me?
I do.
Okay, good. No, I was just going to comment on 2 things that you had said. One about the discussion boards and their use in the online learning. I had done that and used like a rubric to kind of, as a grading criteria, and I just wanted to know what you thought on that. Because I know shouldn't be the only way you could assess and evaluate a student's learning, but it also, I know, adds to their dialogue among each other.
Yes. Great question, and probably we need to back up and say, what is the purpose of that particular discussion forum? And so you get that clear, and then the next thing is you have to decide, are you going to grade it or not grade it? And you need to be clear with the students.
Right.
That's that part of it.
And right, and I think that expectation in the beginning, and when you're presenting the class in the beginning, that you'll be using the discussion boards, and this is how you're going to be graded on that, so the expectations are there are really key.
Yes. And then certainly the rubric, because that makes it clear to the students what they are to do, and it makes it clear and easy for you as a teacher to buzz through those assignments.
Right, and then you had just made another comment, which we learned sort of after the fact, so I thought for the second cohort it might be important that 3 hours of prep equals to 1 hour. If you could just comment on the Carnegie rule. I had never heard that, but then we learned it when we were doing our teaching practicum.
Okay. Well, this came out years ago, at least 10, maybe 15 or 20. The Carnegie Foundation, they do a lot of research and work about teaching and learning, and that's kind of what they came up with at that point in time, is that, for the students who are doing well, that's what it really took, the 3 hours of prep to be, be ready to do good things in the classroom and to succeed and get the high grades. But, I think when we have to cite something, that seems to be what we pull up, and we use that to inspire the students to know that they have to do some work.
Okay.
But at the same time, practically, in this day and age, I'm not sure. And then if we think about nursing students, and particularly post-baccalaureate students, some of the topics in our courses, even the clinical ones, if you're being prepared to be a cardiac nurse practitioner and you work in an ICU, some parts of that content are going to be easy, and you don't need to spend 3 hours for one.
Right.
But if you work in OB and you're trying to be a cardiac person, you have to put more time in it. So that it varies by the student. So if you like to have something to fall back on, that is. But I think in this day and age and how
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, that makes sense, because you have different technologies. I didn't know where that came from, but it was helpful to know that.
Yeah, but the point is, the students have to put some effort forth.
Right.
And later on here, I'm going to try to talk about how to manage your time. And one place where faculty in a classroom or online, we do too much work for the students. We get
right.
mixed up.
Right. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okie dokie. Well, now, what I'd like you to do is a 1-minute paper. Now, some of you've done this. If you haven't, this is a great one. This is a fun one in online. It's really, works good. You can do it like we're going to do today, when we're synchronous, but it's nice asynchronously too. So this is what I want you to do, and we'll probably allow a little more than 1 minute, but do a quick design of a lesson on a topic that you're familiar with, that's a distance accessible course. And these are RN to BSN students, and most of them live 80 miles away, so that's the scenario. So quickly think through, what technology are you going to use? Are you going to blend it? What are you going to do about it? The synchronous, asynchronous, or how are you going to work that out? And then specifically, how will you integrate the 7 principles? So everybody pull out a piece of paper and give it a shot. And then what I would like, here I'm going to go ahead and flip over this slide and I'll come back. Since I can't see you, and if I were in the classroom, I'd kind of look around and see people were raising their hands and starting to talk to each other. But here I have to ask, when you're done, put your little hand up, and when I see the majority of you up, we'll come back and we'll do some sharing. Okay, so 1-minute paper, and there's the scenario. So, just a quick thought here. Okay, I don't see a lot of hands up, but let's just say 1 more minute. This is quick and dirty. Hello. Yeah. We're still here. And I'm probably going to, it looks like we're getting a little critical mass here. So I'll say put your hands down so that, no, maybe click you off or you can. Get yourselves off. So that I'm going to ask for volunteers here about this. So when I ask again, you can raise your hand and I'll call on you for some examples. So you guys know that 1 minute paper, that's one of those classroom assessment techniques that the quick way to be sure that the students have understood and can apply the concepts that you've discussed thus far. And you can see how easy it is. And when I do it online, I just put the scenario up there and tell them what probably questions like this so that we're clear with what's to be included, no more, no less. And then the students post it, everybody sees it, and they can compare and contrast their work with each other, so maybe they get some different ideas and learn from each other that way. And if I'm going to grade it, then we'll have a little rubric, but usually what I do is I just read it quickly, and then because the way my learning management system works, I can just click underneath it and send back some feedback or a grade, depending on how I'm going to do it. So here, the reason I'm doing this, one is get a little active learning, get you thinking, and if you were in groups, I would have you, discuss among your group, but we're all together here. So, mainly, we want to be sure that everybody's on board with these concepts. And just so that you know that we're really I can only tell if you can apply, which means I know that you understood and you know it and you've understood it and you can get to application, but we don't see at this point an analysis, synthesis, or evaluation. We need to do that different kind of learning activity. Okay, nothing else. How about some examples here? Let's try to do 2 or 3 here. Does somebody want to volunteer? Want to be brave? Raise your hand and I can call on you, or I guess you could, I'm okay if you just jump in with your *6 to unmute and talk. Oh, okay, Patty. Go for it. *6 to unmute. Patty, reach you.
Oh, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay. Actually, I think what I would do would be like a Blackboard type scenario, and probably what most of the didactic components would be asynchronous, but then perhaps every 1 to 2 weeks have a synchronous session. And right from the beginning, I would just fairly communicate, the expectations of the course, how long I think that things may take, and also I would want to know from the students what their expectations of the course and then also of the instructor, what do they feel that they need to get from either myself or from the course itself. And I like the idea of doing case studies, and I love this 1 minute paper. This is my first time with a 1 minute paper.
Okay.
So I think that I would actually incorporate a lot of this and just, like in 1 minute, okay, what we just discussed, tell me everything that you know.
Okay. But you want, just to clarify about the 1 minute paper, you want to focus it on the learning outcome. So if we were saying the learning outcome here from this last little section was understands the 7 principles and how to integrate them into an online course, that's what you want to look for in that paper. So one thing I want to ask you is, you said you were going to do some asynchronous, and how are you going to do that?
Probably just have, like depending on what, like if we were, because I'm P, so if I was talking about respiratory issues, and all the different conditions that may apply under that heading, have that up like in an outline form with then the assigned readings. Then when it came to the synchronous, when we all got together, basic questions, and then perhaps then do the case studies.
Okay, and then you would just, where are you going to be when you're synchronous?
Well, I'm assuming if we're 80 miles away, probably something as this format, like a webinar.
Yeah, okay. That's what I was wondering about. And, you know, there may be some reason to bring them to campus or a center, you know, in their area. Great. Okay, you did, this is fabulous, and I'm going to call on somebody else. I'd like to hear a little more focus, too, about these 7 principles, but I kind of got the sense of how you were integrating them in there. But I'll give somebody else a chance to talk. But thanks, Patty. Great. And put yourself back on mute with the star 6. So, okay. Janine, I'm going to call on Janine. Janine Cooper.
Okay, hi.
Hi.
All right, I took a totally different look at the assignment, so maybe I'm on task, maybe I'm not. I was thinking when it says design a lesson, I'm thinking a single lesson. So right now I'm immersed in this theory course with Dr. Foley. I'm sure I'm hearing some chuckles. So my assignment for them, or my lesson for them today, is to think about two theorists, choose two theorists, whatever they want, because we've been talking about them now for a little bit. And I want them to compare and contrast the theorists. And I want them to do this on the blackboard so that as they post something, somebody else can post something else. So at the end, we have each theorist totally developed.
Okay.
So I'm thinking they're engaged, they're talking with one another. I'm thinking that they are interacting with me as well. I'm providing some feedback. Certainly this is an active learning assignment. Thinking that it's a tough assignment in a lot of ways, so maybe expectations are up there, depending how it's laid out entirely. I think I hit most of the of what we were trying to do there.
Yes, you did a great job. You know, if I were reading this and getting the good feedback, you understood the assignment and you got it complete. So it sounds like it was an asynchronous on the blackboard, and one way to set that up is if you can get some kind of a grid or 3 or 4 different forms where or some way that they are dealing with, you know, the comparing and contrasting, I guess.
Yes.
So that it's easy to read. Maybe a blog would be helpful, or a wiki, so that they could add as they go along. Mm-hmm. So that would be good. Great job.
All right, thank you.
Good. Okay. And and let's see. One other. Looks like Elisa has her hand up. Elisa, do you want to do the star 6 and go?
Hello. Yes, I would like to go. I may have taken this a little too far in a minute. For an RN to DSM program, I thought about creating an optional course. My focus is on pain, so my thought was to do a course on chronic pain in primary care, since that's where most of that treatment is headed. I would use slide presentations for short lectures so that the class understood the focus and where we were moving. I would use a shared space for discussions for the nurses to go over their own experiences with patients, perhaps individual or personal experiences dealing with pain. I would have case studies available for different types of pain, such as pediatric trauma, adult workplace injury, age-related pain, and cultural pain responses. And I would break those up into groups where the students could either get together either on a blog or telephone conferencing, because there's lots of access to that doesn't cost a lot of money. They would work on that in groups. That, if it's online or recorded on a blog, it's easy to grade with a rubric or to at least follow the learning to make sure they're on track. And to then individually have them do like a 2-page essay or a 2-page summary of what that chronic pain patient looks like, how they would respond to the scenario, what type of treatment they would be responsible for, what type of outcomes they would be expecting.
Okay. That sounds
That's
like, yeah, great job. And you got, the technology, and I think most of those 7 principles showed up. The respect for diversity can come in where they could choose the case study, or they could design their own, or they could present a case with which they're familiar so that they, real world for them. And
okay.
Another little, I'm doing more teaching than probably needed, but another tip for everybody to pay attention to, because there's similarities here where you're having the students produce some work that, where they're getting some answers and doing some compare and contrast, but we really haven't gotten to some synthesis. And you can now, after the students do the first step, you can have them, in your case, at least when they're looking at those case studies, you could have them go back and then say, take 3 of them and say, what are the commonalities, what are the differences, and have them, take it one more step, or how would you plan, or what common interventions could it be used here. So there's more that you can do once you get the students out. But in terms of doing the 1-minute paper, you did it great, and it's great. Okay, I'm probably, in the interest of time, thankfully, going to call a quit here. I see several others who want to comment. If I have time, I'll come back to you. Nancy, sorry, I'm assuming you wanted to share rather than ask a question, so we'll leave that pending here. Okie dokie, I am going to move ahead, but there you have the 1-minute paper. If you've never done one, you see how quick and easy it is. And I'll say I'm feel as a teacher here satisfied that you got the gist of what we were talking about with these 7 principles and the ins and outs to think about when you're deciding how to deal, at a distance and synchronous versus asynchronous. And you can, we had some really interesting examples. If they were all posted up, we would have all learned some, really interesting things here. Okay, but I'm going to move ahead. So we did that. And now we need to talk a little bit about this business of the community, because that's something else that people, it's a question that comes up. And, it takes a little challenge, but this too can be done. And I'll just say from my years of doing online courses, after the first 3 or 4 weeks, I always feel like I'm connected to the participants, just kind of like I feel connected to you guys, and even though we're not face-to-face right now. So anyway, this notion of, what is community? What does that mean in an online course? And, it's when people are working together here and they feel trust and support from each other. And I do think the students network and, learn quite a bit about each other, even if they have never seen each other. My courses, when I was doing the teacher ed courses, we never had anything face-to-face. We were all just, around the world. And I think most of the students really felt like they were being connected to each other and belonged to the course, and that there was, a good give and take. And now, and all of this, then when there is community, then there's more sense of, the learning is easier and better, maybe even more efficient. The students seem to be satisfied. They feel more connected to each other, which in my research we were using that as an outcome variable. And then they feel, they become more socialized for the profession. So all of that, makes some sense. And now we have another framework for looking at this. People are now beginning to study this, and this particular model is called the Community of Inquiry model. And if anybody's interested, you can email me and I'll give you some references on it. But in that model, what it says is in order for students to learn effectively, they need to have cognitive presence, which, is that they're there and doing some thinking, critical thinking, that we need teaching presence. The teacher needs to be there. In some ways, this is like the 7 principles, and the teacher needs to be, visible and active and so on in the course. And then we need the social presence, which is what that's what we're really trying to create when we're here with the creating this community. And that social presence we've had a lot of research about social presence in online courses too, and the more of it there is, the more of these outcomes occur. So how do you go about creating this in an online course? And lots of it really happens with the course at the course design level, and that's another whole set of courses how to design these courses. But creating a sense of warm fuzziness, and that students, some collegiality develops. That you have activities that the students can work together. But there's, and really I think the community kind of comes through this learning activities. I think most of you had them working together in groups. It's a good way for them to get bonded with each other. And again, all of these 7 principles, and how much, how the faculty, kind of responds and is available and provides opportunities for students to participate. Certainly, at the very beginning, students need to introduce themselves. If you can use tools like little video clips, the students now pretty easily can post those up about themselves and introduce themselves to faculty too. And now we have technology called voice threads, and I think that some faculty, like using those because what it is students recording, some comments, and the faculty can record too, and you get a better sense of who the people are. But actually, there's a recent article out here, lots of strategies on how to create the community, but again, it's something intentional that the faculty member does, just like you do in the classroom. Okay, so I'm moving. Any comments on social presence and community? Comments or questions? Okay, I'll assume everybody's good. So, what happens when you go to teach online? And I'm hoping everybody will have a chance to do at least one little lesson. Some of you have had opportunities as, being in a course as a student. Of course, being a teacher on the other end is a little different view of it. And so network around and find the faculty member who's teaching an online course and see if you can at least chat with them and peek in their course, and if not, to teach a little module or lesson or something. So what happens when you go out here and get in these courses? Well, this is what I've noticed over the years that I've done this and talked to faculty who are doing it. The hardest part is that you are an expert in the classroom and you move to being a novice, because it's really a different experience, both of designing the course and of being in it. And it takes a little while to kind of get over that hurdle, because we know what we're doing in the classroom. We know how our teaching plays out to the students, and we can, get some quick feedback. But then we have to go to the novice mode where we're learning it all over again, and we're learning to respond to different cues. So that's one thing that happens. But the other thing, in the classroom we always talk about trying to, move in the direction to focus on the students and less on the teacher and the teaching, it's on the learning, and trying to empower and facilitate the students. Well, in an online course, you absolutely have to be in that mode. And that's one reason why I like it and why I like faculty to have an experience of it, because once people come back into the classroom, every time I've talked to a faculty member who's taught online and then they go back into the classroom, they change their classroom approaches, because they've learned what it's like to let go, give up, and not be the person that's I call it the funnel to the sponge, but more looking at what kind of learning activities can you design that's going to help the students meet the learning outcomes. And, of course, they'll get some more tech skills, and, we all got our tech skills either back today or we learned them for using this technology, but everybody survived. We're doing good. And, the way that the students are in the class is different, but you get used to that, and I can tell when somebody's upset or when they're, having trouble or trouble learning, and so you kind of have to learn how to do that. And here's the other thing that can happen is, I'll just use myself as an example. Usually when I teach in the classroom, I, can get that ready the night before. I can put that off to the very last thing, because I know I can walk in there and mutter and do something in there without, having to spend hours getting it ready. Although I should, but, we often work on the fly. But when you're online, you have to have this all organized ahead of time. So that's another thing. Once you get these courses ready, you're good to go, because it's all done ahead of time. So you can expect that your teaching is going to change, and probably the first semester or first course that you teach, fully in an online environment, you'll go through some of these changes. So you can be prepared for that, but you know that you're going to land on your feet on the other end. Okay, and this is what I see for myself, and when I talk to other faculty who have put their courses online. The course really gets thought out better. You have a chance. We forget what we do in the classroom. I can remember the first time I taught, I wrote every word in my lecture, and it took hours, and then you get faster and faster. But so then toward the anyway, your courses will be better and organized better because you have to think it through all over again. But you do now intuitively. You will have to go back and think and make maybe even different instructional decisions. You can push the students to a higher level because we're just not, giving the PowerPoint lecture in class. We're really probing them to think. We can see what they're thinking. We can see what everybody's thinking because if you're having them do a learning activity, you see the outcomes. I saw, the sampling of the 3 people who participated. I could see what was going through your mind. So we get a lot of higher level learning. The other thing, the playing field gets leveled. And what I always like is the people that you might not have expected to have such deep thoughts really do. And they come forth and share a lot of information, and maybe they would be just sitting in the classroom thinking all these thoughts, but they either choose not to or don't want to speak up. But everybody loses, the great ideas that the students who aren't high vocal in the classroom. So it levels the playing field. It also keeps the people who are high verbal, keeps them on the level playing field too. But anyway, also what I like is that I feel that it's a way of meeting the students' needs in a different way than you can in the classroom. So you will end up with some certain amount of satisfaction here. But there's no getting around it. There's workload involved here. But let's talk about how you can manage that a little bit. And I know from my experience that anything that is not easy to manage is my own fault. So I try to get smarter now here as I design things and make sure it's something that I can deal with. So you want to have the big bang assignment so that you're not dealing with a whole bunch of things. Like one example I'll say is, when you're teaching test construction, maybe I was having them write the question and then I did start with a test plan. That was one assignment, and then I had them write the question, and then I had them blah, 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 blah. There's 7 steps to it. But now I just have them develop a test, put all the elements together, and that's the one assignment. And I used to have them write 10 different kinds of test questions. Now I sample. I have them do 1 or 2, so I'm not reading 10 different test questions. So there's a concrete example of trying to get your assignments big and not having to do a lot of grading. Every assignment that you're going to put a grade to, you're going to have to spend time doing that. So you can simplify your grading, by having the peer review of written work ahead of time. Have a peer do the APA. Look ahead of time or get your grading rubrics going. A lot of the stuff that we do in the class is not big stuff. So be sure that you're focusing on really important, need to know, need to learn, need to be competent with kinds of things. And then here in the green, which means go, we have to be clear. Our job is to design the course and facilitate it, but students have to do the work and learn and attain the competency. So if we start putting a lot of stuff out there that's easy for the students to grab, but we're the ones that are learning how to put the content together, then we probably don't. That's maybe more work than we need to do. So, think about that. So the first step is to get that course easy to manage. The next thing is when you're choosing these assignments, or even the learning activities, but we'll say the assignments here, make them short. That 1-minute paper, you can learn a lot in that short little thing. And I say to, when they're writing it out, putting it up, posting it up, I say 3 sentences. They have to really focus. And you want to have these assignments such that you're giving formative evaluation as you go along and feedback, so when you get to the end and you have to grade it, the students have had time to, adjust and adapt or revise and fix problems that they're having as they go along. So you're not giving a grade at the end that you wish you didn't have to do. Particularly if it's, like a paper, you want to be sure that you've seen bits and pieces of it as it comes along. Again, how many assignments do you need? And every one that you make that you're going to grade, you have to deal with. So be practical. The rubrics, we talked about that. The other thing is, keep these assignments coming throughout the course instead of everything all do at the end. You'll kill yourself trying to get everything done. And then, again, as much as you can have the students do either peer review or self-review assignments where they can get the grade. I love the test tool in your learning management systems. You can give them all kinds of, multiple choice or any kind of test, really. And then click, they can get the answers, and they can keep taking that until they get them all right. So use some of those kinds of things. That's good. Okay. Time management, you want to be sure that you're not spending more time teaching than you that's practical. And I will say, after I got my courses designed and maybe taught them once because it does take a little more time then, I said to myself, if I were teaching this course in the classroom, I would be spending 3 hours a week in the classroom and say 1 or 2 hours a week, with grading papers or talking to students or whatever. So say 5 hours. And I tried to make sure I wasn't doing any more than that. It's really easy to get lost in these courses and be spending 5 hours a day instead of 5 hours a week. So be sure that you, are being thoughtful about not letting this infringe. And let's see, I want to be sure we talk about office hours so you can talk to the students. In the bigger courses, have small groups. And then it's better for the students because then they're only reading posted for, say, 8 or 10 students rather than a class of 70 or 80. And again, try to get high-order, high-level learning activities that have short responses. That 1-minute paper is a pretty good example of that. And we didn't bump that up to the highest, the most, you can make that more complex, what we did today, that little 1-minute paper thing. But you can see in a short period of time how you can read through 100 of those and get the gist of who understands it and who doesn't. Okay. Well, just like in the classroom, we're having more and more students in our online courses too, and so we need to think about how we're going to deal with that when the time comes, or when it's upon us. So one comforting fact that I always like to remind myself is that the bigger the class doesn't mean that the learning is going to disintegrate. So we can get high-level learning and good learning outcomes and 100% competency attainment in large courses, but we have to be mindful of how we put the courses together. And those best practices absolutely need to be present. So be sure that everything that you're doing in your large class, that you're engaging all 7 of those principles. And again, kind of making small mini groups to do it, to get the students so that they are working, together in a small group and not having to read a lot of stuff. And that the other thing that I was doing when my courses were getting big was having a group put it together, the paper, and then instead of reading 80, I was reading 8 or 10. So you can be thinking about, strategies like that if you're ending up with a large course. Okay, I'm going to talk fast here because we're going to allow, 5 or 10 more minutes for questions and comments. So keep things simple. Simple, simple, simple. Yes, keep it simple, silly. So, high outcomes, sampling strategies. In the classroom, you ask a question, you don't get everyone's answer. You get 3 or 4 people like we did today raising their hands. I could tell that people were on track. Everybody then saw 3 examples. They could compare their own work to the examples that were given and move on. But in an online course, if you pose a question, maybe you're going to be getting 80 answers. So you could divide them into groups. They'll say people with last name beginning with A, B, and C are answering this question, D, E, and F are answering another one. So you don't have to have, pretty soon, there's not much more that can be said about the topic, so, you can control things that way. Okay. Use your work simplification tools. All these text tools. Learn how to, if you don't know how to use any of these, make sure that you do. And then my lesson learned is to save everything, because you don't need to recreate it every time. So once you get some things going, recycle. Reuse, recycle. Okay. I'm going to stop. We're going to have questions, so get them ready. Here's what I'd love for you to do as a follow-up, and those of you that are new, I didn't put this in the module format. I'll get back to that for the next sessions, but I usually like to have some kind of activity for you guys to do, and I would love for you to, if you have never been in an online course, at least get in one and look at it, and better yet, try to get in a situation where you teach it. Because what's going to happen is when you get a job as a faculty member and you're busy with your research or you're busy with your clinical practice, and your dean says to you, this semester you're going to be teaching online, and you're starting from scratch, that's going to be a big disruption to your other work that's going on. So be sure that you, while you have the luxury of time here, and I know you don't think you do, but you do, while you're a scholar, be sure that you have an experience of doing something in a distance ed format, in addition to knowing how to be excellent participants in webinars. Okay, so think about those 7 principles, because they're so wonderful. All righty, thank you. I want to remind you here, coming up next CLC sessions, I'm going to take questions here in a minute, so get them ready, get your hands raised. We're going to be talking here December 9th. The first one is on, this is another topic that you guys wanted on the agenda. So Carolyn Huerta is going to talk to us about the students, who have English as an additional language. And she'll probably talk a little bit about cultural competence. And I know we've had a session similar to this, and but I think it bears repeating, and maybe it will have new meaning for you now, because our classrooms are getting more and more diverse, and they need to be thinking of the strategies that will be helpful to all of the students in our class. And then the career builder, and this really is for the current master's students who are graduating in whenever you are, April, May, June, August, whatever it is, coming up sooner than you think. We're going to talk about how to find the ideal academic appointment, and Susan Bakewell-Sachs and I will share our thoughts with you. And anybody's welcome, but for sure we're kind of expecting the master's students to show up here. So let's go back, and what kind of questions do you have? What's not clear? Muddy points? Sheila, I see your hand, so I'll call on you. Star 6 to unmute.
Hello?
Sheila. Yeah, hi Sheila.
Hello?
Yes, I hear you.
Hi. Hey, I have a question. I taught one online class, and then I did a practicum teaching one module for somebody else. And I keep running into the same, and it doesn't seem like it's a problem when people talk about it, but I perceived it to be a problem. When there were group assignments, and there were a lot of students, so it sort of made sense that there would be group assignments. I got the feeling that it was one student doing the work.
Yeah.
That in the practicum, I actually had a sense in reading that people were, okay, you take this assignment, you take assignment 5, I'll take assignment 6. But there were different voices. It didn't sound like a combined voice. And even on the discussion board, they would be asked, some people would have, like, everyone in the group join in the discussion and ask questions. Other people, the 2 people would ask the question as one. But you knew really only one person was doing that. I mean, is that okay? I just got the sense that not everybody was actually doing the work.
Okay. Well, you can take a couple of views on this. One thing is if you want to take a competency outcome approach where you want everybody to get to the end, but you don't need to mind or care how they get there.
Mm-hmm.
But they do have to get there and, meet the outcomes of the course. So if they're not lifting all the weight, but they can do the competencies, then you can take the position that that's okay. And maybe they're learning in a different way, by processing the information, by learning from their classmates, and you can give them trust. And that's often how I operate. But another way, if you want to be sure that everybody's doing their fair share, you can put in the controls for that. And they run like this, that everybody has a role, everybody has to post something up and sign their name to it, or what piece of the paper they wrote, they have to put their name on it. The rubric says that everybody participates in the discussion, and you're kind of grading them on that. Or there's those complicated formulas we use sometimes in the classroom to be sure that the small groups are working together, where you do the peer review and all of that. Mm-hmm. What happens when you start putting in all those controls, you have to implement them. Right. And that gets to be more work. Right. So you have to decide what's more important for the students' learning. And you take back or look at your current life. If you're on a curriculum committee or faculty meeting, or even when I do collaborative writing with my colleagues, not everybody's lifting the 10-pound weight. Many of them are lifting the 1 pound. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So it's part of life, too. But you have to decide how much control you want. And it's probably to think about what are, in addition to attaining the competencies, there's something else that you want the students to do.
I think that if I had to do what I have done again, I may have left it, the groups on certain projects, but then included some individual projects.
Sure. And another thing is, some students do not like working in groups. It's a learning style, it's a proven learning style. And what I have done there, because that was something that kept coming up in the course evals, they didn't like working on these group projects. I would say, if you prefer working in group, here's the general gist of the group. If you're not going to work with a group, do it on your own, but you have to do the whole thing. Mm-hmm. So you can. That's the other beauty of the notion of diversity. Give them options.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. And I see Lisa has her hand up. So Lisa.
Can you hear me?
I do. Hi.
Hi. I taught a course where I did have one class during the semester be an online type class where it was like a PowerPoint, and I had the audio and case study, and I had broken the students up into small groups of 8, 9, or 10 based on their clinical size group. So they had to respond to each other's clinical or to members in their clinical group. And then throughout the segment of the online class, I had questions that they then found on one of their exams. I'm sorry, I had to put on here. But the question I have is, I really like the webinar format. How much does something like this cost to really make real?
Why did you need it?
Well, the budget for an individual school of nursing to get access to this unless you have a grant is probably prohibitive. But you could poke around. Where are you teaching?
I'm not teaching right now.
But where were you? Oh.
Cedar Crest College in Pennsylvania, and I remember asking them about webinars and whatnot and distance learning, and they said the same thing. It was prohibitive, and they couldn't even consider doing it. But they never told me how much it cost or anything like that.
Well, it's hard to cost out, but a lot of the costs, particularly in one like this, is how many participants you have, how long it is, how much tech support you need from the company that you're purchasing this from. But I would say ask beyond the School of Nursing. Often these tools are well hidden at the university level. And unless you ask and stamp your feet a little bit, they are easily accessible. So don't, my policy is not to take no for an answer. And if you are starting to ask at the university level, maybe there's some other people on the campus and other departments that want to do it too. You can band together with them and kind of push the university into buying it. The site licenses for the university are much less expensive, and many universities are, some of it's a toolkit, that Adobe, some of that's just an add-on to, the Adobe Reader and some of those products that they already have. Adobe Connect is the brand that most universities that I'm familiar with use. Also, I think there's some functionality like this with Blackboard. So you can look and see if your existing learning management system has some extension capabilities for this.
Yeah, we had e-college. But when you say it's prohibitive, is it like $1 million, $500,000?
Well, I would say probably more in the range of, let's see, I did one on a grant one time, and I think you have 5 or 6 sites connected for 2 hours. Ran about, I'm going to say $400 or $500, but that's just one time.
Okay.
And that's leasing, or, the college didn't have the software. They were moving in that direction now.
Okay.
So, unless you have a grant.
Okay.
But I'll just ask you to push. Ask all the way up to the president.
All right.
Yeah, because this is nice, having this.
It is, and I really prefer it to, as I said, an online class. It was just a 2-hour, well, I had a PowerPoint going with audio for like an hour and 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And then they had to do a case study where they could do it on their own time, whenever they wanted to, but they had to respond to other people within their clinical group, and I set up the clinical group.
Okay, that sounds like a doable way of
yes, it was for a 2-hour class, so instead of them meeting in class, they were able to do this on their own time.
Now what I would say to you, go back now that we've talked about those 7 principles, and you reflect on how many of those principles were activated in this lesson that you were just describing. Not to answer me now, but you do the reflection. Okay, everybody. Okay, well, I have about time for us to quit because we're going to reconvene again at 3. I want to say this may have been the very best webinar we've ever had. At least I thought it went well. We didn't have any technical glitches. So I for sure want to thank you guys and Tanya and Jennifer for getting this all working so nicely, and for you all to get online and to be doing this. I think we got our mission accomplished.
Well, thank you.
Okay, so we're going to hang up, disconnect, go to that other email, log in, be sure that everybody has the phone next to your name so that we're all good to go. And as usual, email. You can email me if you have